All right, all right, all right. What's up, everybody? Super excited to start office hours. I feel like I'm kind of going back to my roots here. When I started in poker, I was just in the ground floor, answering a lot of questions to a lot of different people, some of whom, didn't have a lot of experience in the mental game, others that did. So I feel like we're, kind of starting something special here. I hope so. I appreciate you all being here to kind of kick this off. I see some of the comments kind of pouring in here. So Captain Axelrod, happy to have you, man. Barry, Shlomi, let's rock and roll. So format for today, I'm going to kind of talk about greed and fear at the outset. I've got some comments and questions that have kind of come in through my website, and I'll answer those questions. But yeah, you guys can just answer questions, post questions. I'll get to them kind of as we go along. I'm a bit of a streaming rookie here, so I'm happy to make some mistakes. Who knows what will happen? But I'm going to try to make this a really productive hour for all of us, and really kind of make it what it needs to be for all of you. I love the interactions. I learn a lot from this process. It's not just kind of about serving you guys. I am self-serving in this regard. I like doing it. I learn a lot from it. I hear from different types of people who might not normally interact with me, and hear kind of the things that you need to know about, and that makes me better at my job because I get challenged and kind of think things from a different angle. And so yeah, it's enjoyable in that regard. Like I said, I learn a lot, and I also want to be broadening the appeal of the mental game and the practicality of it, the applicability of it, to a larger group of people. And so I hopefully this will be a simple way for people to kind of, get some interest in it, and get answers more easily without a lot of hurdles. So, if you've got, friends out there and, people you think are kind of on the fence about, what is this psychological BS? And yeah, I can control my emotions, just mention it to them, say, hey, there's this guy, he's answering some questions, no skin off your back, just show up, and you might learn something and maybe change your perspective. Because like I've said, those of you who are here, I assume, know my work fairly well. And, there's a practicality element that is really kind of ingrained in everything that I do. I'm a big fan of great advice. I love, the quotes that, can inspire you. But when the rubber meets the road in those critical moments when you can kind of be teetering on the edge of making some boneheaded mistakes and, getting overly emotional, you need to have a foundation of mental integrity, right? Strength and, kind of clarity on what your weaknesses are, what you're battling in those moments. So you're prepared. And that advice, unless it's actually kind of fundamentally changing, your approach is going to break down. And that's what happened for me, 20 plus years ago when I was trying to play professional golf. I know it happens to you all, as you're competing, at poker and golf, trading, you name it, right? This is a kind of an open environment to kind of talk about the mental game for whomever is interested in getting answers to the things that they're struggling with. So, yeah, I think that's kind of all I wanted to kind of toss up here. Like I said, I'm a little bit of a rookie here, but at least, compared to the book launch, my microphone is working. So yeah, everybody can learn here. All right. See lots of comments coming in. Appreciate the praise here, and let's rock and roll. So, all right. So we're going to talk about greed and fear, because greed and fear is, it's certainly in trading a topic that is really ubiquitous. I mean, it's just, you see the greed fear index. It's a something that people talk about a lot, right? And yet when you look at poker players and golfers and athletes, esports, greed shows up there too. This is not just a problem for traders. And the reason I can say that is because greed, as it's typically talked about in trading, has a bit of a misnomer to it. I mean, your job is to make money. So, to think that aspiring to make a lot of money is a problem doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You'd never say that any golfer or athlete trying to win championships is being greedy. So you attempting to make money as a trader is not a problem. That's your job. The problem comes in as, there are specific decisions that you make that are, kind of counter to your strategy. And so I think the big thing you've got to keep in mind, whether you're a trader, whether you're a poker player, whether you're a golfer, wherever, is to look at where your ambition and your desire to win, whether that's championships, tournaments, or money, gets excessive and causes you to make decisions that are, again, kind of counter to your interests and actually going to make you lose or, lower the chances that you will, or increase the chances that you will. So it's to each of you to decide for yourselves whether or not an action that you take, a decision that you take, is greedy or not. And that's not something that anybody from the outside looking in can decide. We can look at, Twitter, especially, in the crypto days right now with, BTC and drawdown and, buy the dip and Doge going to the moon, and all that stuff. Like we can sort of, from the outside, make it seem like people are being greedy by trying to maximize their profit. But if they're making sound decisions based off of their system and strategy, it may not be greedy for them. They may be making sound decisions. Now, we can say for sure that some are being greedy and some are incredibly overconfident. But the key is, right, you got to decide for yourself. And when we look at greed, right, greed is just simply excessive ambition. It's your desire to win in a way that's going to actually make it more likely that you're going to lose. So let me share with you a document that I think it will be helpful to begin your process, right? So if you've gotten into the mental game of trading or you've read the mental game of poker, you want to start to map your greed, right? And this is a document that can help you kind of detail out, right, the detail out the details of your greed and fear, or of your greed. So, wait a minute. Okay, this is actually look at this. There we go. Updating documents as we speak. So this document is available on my website, jaredtendler.com/worksheets. You can download this for free. It's basically just kind of a companion for the book. And the idea is basically you want to get very detailed about the early warning signs that greed is beginning to appear. And those warning signs, are maybe a bit too subtle for you to recognize now. But the more that you kind of pay attention to it and map it, the easier it will be to identify. I mean, it's sort of simple in that regard. The key is that it becomes sort of this iterative process where you're, kind of taking notes, paying attention to instances where greed is showing up for you, and whether that's during the trading day, soon thereafter. And over time, you begin to develop a map. And I'm going to pull up a section of the book so you can see an example of this. One sec here. Get rid of this. All right. So when we're talking about greed, right, we can look at this story from, or this example from the book. So here you've got, right, level 1, thinking about the utility of money, wanting to lock up the gain. I want to have that big trade to secure the profit and achieve better returns to see progress, right? So that for Max, right, this client from the book, that was like the first warning sign of greed. And for him, taking action at that point was essential because he could prevent, right, actions that would ultimately be greedy. But as he continued to iterate on it, right, and as we get kind of deeper in here, this became his new number 1, right? Logging into his brokerage account to have a brief look at P&L that he's currently running in a trade, right? So that is an example of what the iteration looks like. That you're able to spot these early signs because now, right, he's not battling up against as much greed. He's able to actually take action faster, and what that does is it delays the onset of it. It prevents it from being bigger, right? Because again, the emotional system has the power to shut down higher brain functions. And if that occurs, then your ability to control that impulse for greedy decision-making, becomes compromised. So it's really, really important that you're able to map those early signs and eventually create something that is, kind of as robust, right, as this is. I mean, look how, we're talking about all 10 levels. That's a lot of detail when it comes to, your greed. And when you have that kind of detail, it becomes a heck of a lot easier to break down and take the next step, and uncovering the root of the problem. All right, let me just see if there's any questions here about greed. All right. No. So I'm going to jump into fear now. All right. Now, the thing about fear, especially in trading, but, frankly, in an opposite way within poker, right? In trading, I think fear is a bit overblown. And in poker, certainly when I, came into the scene, 11, 12 years ago, was significantly underappreciated, right? And I think the reason fear is overblown in trading is because it's a very highly volatile, competitive environment. And, if you're thinking that the act of trading is going to be as relaxing as watching a movie, hanging out with your friends, then you're going to underestimate, right, the severity of that the nerves that you feel when you're competing. I mean, every athlete has that intensity to them when they're going to compete. And so when you're in, actually actively trading, you better be feeling something, right? If you're too relaxed, then I would be concerned that your decision-making is going to be poor because you're actually just not focused or energized enough. So fear is different than normal nerves because then there are flaws that have amplified your perception of what's going on. Now, sometimes that flaw is just simply, well, actually, I am misinterpreting the signals. I'm thinking that what I'm feeling, like just the normal nerves, is actually a bad thing. I shouldn't be feeling this way. And so then, right, the nerves sort of accelerate as a result of that. So that's kind of a basic flaw. But of course, we can have other flaws that kind of pile on top of it. For example, you might have really high expectations for yourself. And so the idea of making a mistake gets really, really amplified. The desire for perfection is not balanced. And so you end up making mistakes out of a fear of mistakes, which, is pretty painful to think that, the thing that you fear is being caused by you. And we're not, providing blame here. We're basically just saying there's something that you don't understand yet that is causing you to make those mistakes as a result of fear. So the antidote to fear, right, is certainty. You cannot have fear when you have certainty. And not a lot of people sort of think about it, in those terms. But, if you knew, even on a losing day, right, kind of poker player, trader, right, that you knew that 100% you made every decision to the best of your ability, it was verified by some kind of magic, right? Then there's not any fear that tomorrow is going to be a bad day. You're going to go into the next day, kind of optimistic that you were performing well and making good decisions, and market or the poker environment will yield what it yields, right? Because that's the thing, we don't have full control in the short term, in those environments. So a lot of fear can be reduced by providing certainty. Now, how do you provide certainty in these environments? Well, one thing that you can do is map out the different gradations of your skill set, right? So this is different than the profile. So you can do a fear profile, right, to understand what the grade levels of fear look like, just like you would with greed. But there's another concept I talk about in the books called the A to C game analysis, right? And the A to C game analysis, all right, well, let me just pull one up. We'll make it easy. The A to C game analysis is really helpful when you are struggling with fear as a result of some, as you're struggling with fear as a result of, a kind of excessive uncertainty, right? You're not really sure how well you're actually performing, in those environments. And so the idea is to map out what your A game, B game, and C game look like from a technical perspective and a mental perspective. And here is kind of what it looks like. I can find it. There it is. Okay, so yeah, basically what you see here is, just a very simple, this is what your A game looks like. Very relaxed, decisive, patient. You can kind of obviously fill in your own details there. B game, right? A bit of overthinking kind of picking up here. Maybe some missing some obvious trades, kind of going against gut. Here in C game, we're talking about more distractions or some negative self-talk, trading P&L. And then, we kind of look at, all right, this is what your tactical skill level looks like in your A game, B game, C game. So when you go through this map of kind of the different levels of your performance, it provides a degree of certainty in an environment where there's a ton of uncertainty. And so, yes, this is not going to provide perfect feedback, but it is a great antidote, especially for those of you who really, really kind of get obsessive about checking P&L or obsessive about checking the cashier and like auto refreshing this stuff, especially on down days or maybe even on, big winning days, right? This can provide the feedback you need to know if you're making sound decisions. And obviously, if you're not, then you need to make some adjustments, and that adjustment might be taking a break. So again, the antidote to fear is certainty. In these environments, we want to look at ways that you can create certainty. And let me get to some questions. All right. So what do we got here? Morton, what about the fear of making a mistake, not optimizing the EV? Yeah, what about it? I mean, so like the fear of making a mistake is always going to have some kind of a flaw to it. The idea that you would be fearful of learning, right, is an obvious flaw. And so, but I mean, obviously there's a performance element to it, right? You make a mistake, you're going to lose. But if you make a mistake that is an A game mistake, it's pure learning. I mean, you're basically like investing in your future competency. And so it's really sometimes the fear of obvious mistakes that people, have a much harder time with. And the problem is not the mistake there, right? You're making obvious mistakes because you don't understand what has compromised your emotional state or your mental state, right? You don't make an obvious mistake unless there's something already kind of off, right? So the problem is not the mistake. The problem is what's causing your mind to degrade so that a mistake is basically inevitable. So when you figure out what that is and go through the process of kind of chipping away at that, beginning to correct it, your fear of mistakes inevitably will start to disappear. All right. Actually, you know what? Let me see if I can show this. Look at this. Barry. All right. I took notice of negative future on page 79. I often get a, what if I lose before a trade? Is it fear of loss of money or ego? I assume ego because I'm not playing with money I can't afford to lose. So let's just be clear about what ego is. Okay. There's a lot of, I think, kind of misconceptions on that concept. So ego is just identity or your confidence or your self-esteem, right? Ego tends to have a negative connotation to it, as if, you say somebody has an ego, typically you mean like they're arrogant, right? And so it can have a negative connotation, but really ego is just confidence. So if you're saying, what if I lose before a trade, maybe you've got to just answer the question. I think if you're playing with money you can afford to lose, then it's clearly not money that you're wondering. Maybe it's just what the money represents, and maybe it's the fear of losing confidence. I don't know. Let me know if that sounds familiar. Let me get some comments or some questions that came in before from my Google form on my website. Carlos is asking how to improve mindset in hard market conditions. So it's harder to improve your mind when the environment is harder. That's just sort of a fact, right? So the way that you can perform is to prepare, right? And you obviously want to prepare before the conditions get difficult. If you don't have that luxury, then you're in for a battle. And it becomes really, really important, that you identify what kind of starts to come up. I mean, I think the worst case scenario in hard market conditions, and certainly I think in the last week or so with crypto, right? Use that difficulty to help elicit and understand what problems you're dealing with. I mean, it's not going to help you necessarily to make massive progress at that time, but at a minimum, if you can better understand what problems you're going to typically face on a day-to-day basis, because typically hard market conditions are only going to expose smaller issues that show up day to day, but just in bigger scale, right? So when it's smaller, they're harder to see. When they're bigger, they're easier to see. So do the work, better identify and understand what the heck is happening, and then you'll have a better chance of being able to solve some of this stuff, in the future and go to work with it. So, I know that's not like kind of a perfect answer for what to do immediately in hard market conditions, but to me, that's the most simple way to get the most out of it. And then certainly, when you have more time, do the work. All right. Andy is saying, I feel very unmotivated by poker. I don't want to play or study. I've taken some time off, but it's not improving. How do I break this cycle? So, common way of looking at this, right? You took some time off. So my assumption is that you thought that burnout was the cause of your lack of motivation. So with some time off, physical energy is back, mental energy is probably back, and yet you're not motivated. So what can cause that? Now we start to look at your goals first and foremost, right? Motivation and goals kind of go hand in hand, right? Your motivation is driven to achieve your goals. And sometimes if there's a lack of clarity with them, which can often happen, after you've had some success. I've worked with players, for years who, win a big tournament and motivation falls off a cliff. So for them, they needed to set new goals. And for those who maybe achieved a level of financial stability, and so it wasn't necessarily won a tournament, it was just kind of climb the ranks and make a pretty good nest egg and, fairly well financially secure for the next 3 to 10 years, whatever. And so, yeah, the kind of everyday battle to make that a reality, to kind of get to that position is no longer, as motivating. And so the goals have to change. And so one of the things you want to really do is just kind of break apart and say, what do you want now? Have your goals changed? So one of the things that typically occurs as monetary goals become less important is the process goals become more important. It becomes more about, seeing how good of a player you can become, about developing, greater discipline and work ethic, because there's a level of pride and satisfaction from doing that. Or, as can happen too, is let's say, maybe your interest in poker actually is waning and you're kind of looking for something else. Typically people want to just like jump into the next thing. But I really often advise that you kind of make the most of the opportunity that's in front of you. You're very well skilled in poker. Don't just jump into a new environment when you have the opportunity to maybe develop some more skills, whether that be, again, in developing better discipline, work ethic, study habits, things like that. Or maybe there are kind of mental game, issues beyond just motivation, that need to get addressed. So you can kind of work on all those in poker and then, start to transition into another environment, and automatically you're going to have less work to do along those lines. Like you're going to be more successful faster because you're going to have less resistance kind of working against you. The other thing, and this is true for, players of, professionals across the spectrum here. Sometimes motivation can lag when there are significant mental game issues, right? If you're tilting a lot, if you're experiencing a lot of fear, if just going and playing poker or going and trade or going to play golf, tournament golf is really, draining mentally. It's you're losing control, not necessarily even losing money, but just losing control. You might be unmotivated to play, because why would you keep kind of punching yourself in the face if that's what it feels like? All right. I see some more comments coming in here, so let me come back to those. All right. This comes in from Josephine. Can you quickly summarize how to get certainty again? In particular, if you fear is losing money or being wrong. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit more specific. I was sort of saying generally, right, certainty in uncertain environments just comes from having good knowledge. So, knowledge of the different levels of your performance is a way to create certainty. For some traders or poker players, right? Certainty can get created when you spend some time really like consolidating your strategy, your system, the way that you play, the way you make decisions. Sometimes you can kind of wane a little bit in terms of the specificity in your strategy or system, right? There's kind of been 3 or 4 or 5 months of kind of growth, and that lack of consolidation when things start to go against you, when the threat of losing money or being wrong is higher, right, can just kind of come because you're not that certain about your strategy. It's kind of the 30-second elevator pitch. Could you tell me right now on the spot what your strategy is, what your core competency is? Go. And if the answer comes out a little slow, it takes you 60, 90 seconds, a little bit longer, there's room for consolidation, and just write down some of the nuances that you want to add, right? There's certainty to be gained by having more of your knowledge consolidated in your mind. All right. How to deal with fear and greed when sizing up in trading. I'm following process well, but seems every time I try to size up, I end up trading poorly, taking trades I otherwise wouldn't, cutting trades early. So in this scenario, right, the sizing up is putting a greater spotlight on weaknesses that I'm certain are there day to day. And if you can identify what those weaknesses are, okay, and when I say weaknesses, I'm really talking about these underlying flaws. Okay, so we could talk about, again, high expectations, the illusion of control, confirmation bias, hindsight bias. Hindsight bias is a real mind F. I mean, when you end a trading day, end a poker session, end a golf shot, thinking, man, I should have done X. I knew better, right? That's more of an obvious mistake. But when you kind of know afterwards, what has happened, and then you start to criticize yourself for making mistakes that you probably shouldn't have made, but really it was kind of more B game, A game type stuff, you create a cycle of self-criticism that really can start to impact you when you scale up, right? Because now the size of your position is going to make the fear of a mistake, the fear of losing, a lot worse, right? And the hindsight bias has helped to create that, because you're just expecting yourself to, never not know, right? But the reality is you have to know before. You got to know what the right decision is before the trade opportunity passes. I mean, that's just fact. It's just the same in anything, right? So if the hindsight bias is a problem for you, you have to really kind of break the illusion that it's possible for you to have this sort of wellspring of knowledge that is limitless, right? And really ask a better question, which is, how could I have known? Or, what did I not understand that would have allowed me to make some of those decisions? So I realized that, as you're sizing up, you're not necessarily dealing with the hindsight bias in that particular moment. But for example, the hindsight bias, much like all the others, flaws I've mentioned, the seeds have been planted, right, for that problem to then be something that you might fear if the trade goes against you. And, it's the same with any other. So it's really important that you kind of tease out what those underlying flaws are, on a day-to-day basis, right? And then when you start to size up, it becomes a test to see how well you have learned, right? So think about sizing up not necessarily as just a thing to make more money, which it obviously should be, but for you right now, I would really look to solidifying and consolidating, your knowledge and your mental game skill, at your current sizing, and see if you can make some improvements there. And then when you size up, test yourself. Now, the last kind of little X factor here that could be really problematic is accumulated emotion, right? I talk about this in, kind of the chapter 2 in the early parts of the book. Accumulated emotion is sort of the X factor here, because you might have had some pretty significantly painful instances where you sized up and got whacked, right? Big drawdown, big losses, maybe even blown up some accounts. And the pain of that kind of carries with you. And so now as you size up, you're sort of fearing that you might have that kind of pain again. And maybe the pain from the past was a byproduct of your inexperience, your lack of competency, right? And you were, a little bit inexperienced and didn't really know what the heck you were doing, maybe a little overconfident, overconfidence gets shattered. You feel like crap for losing a bunch of money and blowing an account. Now you're different. Now you actually are more skilled, and yet the fear that you might have that kind of pain is still there, even though, it's fundamentally different and really not going to happen like that. So, again, if the accumulated emotion is an X factor for you, then you really kind of got to go back into those past memories and use the mental hand history as the construct to break those down. Just to kind of help you out here, I'll pull up a mental hand history, and just for everybody to know what we're dealing with in case that's a term you're unfamiliar with. Okay, so this is the mental hand history, right? Described in the book. Chapter 3 is where it's introduced, and then there are examples of them throughout the book. But when it comes to dealing with accumulated emotion, the tactic is a little bit different. So this first step, right, describe the problem in detail. You have to do it in past tense terms, right? What was the problem at that time? And in particularly, what are you still kind of holding on to emotionally? What is that emotional baggage that's there? Why is it there? Ask that question and, kind of complete it in that first step. Okay. I'm sure I'll come back to the mental hand history, but I'm just going to take it off for now. All right. I'm going to come back to the comments that keep coming in, which is awesome. So keep them flowing. We still got a half hour here, so plenty of time. Let me go here. All right. Bob asks, have you ever thought of joining forces with somebody to train traders to help get an edge and working with them on the mental side? So kind of like a 1-2 combo. Well, I have thought about that. Truthfully, I'm kind of honestly new in my kind of platform launching phase here with trading. So, I think there will come an opportunity, where I will be able to try to join forces. For me, it's about kind of vetting the right kind of personality. It's not just about their competency, which is, kind of implicit, which, I'm not necessarily going to be the best judge of, trading prowess, but, more about kind of alignment in terms of philosophy and ethic, right? There's obviously a lot of people out there trying to train traders who are, a little less moral in their compass and in the direction that they're trying to achieve. So I want to find somebody who's, has the consumers, all view kind of in their mind, kind of first and foremost. This was something that my dad taught me. He was, a real estate broker back in the day. And, he basically just always told me, if you serve your customers to your best of your ability, you will always have, people coming back wanting your services. So, I mean, that to me is primary with everything I do. I want to make sure that I'm providing high value, huge ROI, and if I do that, then I feel like, there's going to be kind of an endless stream of work, which, so far has been the case. And I love doing what I do. So I think that'll definitely happen. Just a quick kind of reminder, if you guys are enjoying this, finding it useful, kind of please hit that bell on YouTube and, kind of like it, maybe subscribe to my YouTube channel, or, if you're watching on Periscope or on Twitch, just make sure to follow me and, share it. Right. Again, we're kind of building something here. So, please make sure to do all that. All right. Next question. This comes from Anonymous. How should I approach the book? Should I finish each exercise before I keep reading? It feels like a dumb question, but I would like to get your thoughts. No dumb questions. I mean, I forget what movie that's from, but there are no stupid questions, just stupid people. No, I mean, the reality is like this stuff is hard, and I want to make it as easy as possible. So how should you approach the book? I feel like it's really kind of personal. Okay, if you're the kind of person that wants to make sure that you're nailing each step and kind of moving across sequentially, go for it. If you want to kind of have like a broad kind of overview of the whole book and you actually don't do any exercises, you want to kind of just get a broad view of the knowledge of what we're talking about and, begin to then, kind of focus in, you can do that too. I would say if you start to complete the mapping process, that is like the number one thing you can start doing immediately, and you can keep reading without any, kind of knock on your process here. So, you just open up a Word doc, take notes about the different things that I'm trying to get you to map in the book. And why don't we just show you what I'm talking about here. So let me share that file of the book again here. All right. So there we go in here. We're going to go back to the mapping your pattern section. And we're talking about this, okay? Let me just make it a little bigger. There we go. Okay, so yeah, what you're looking to map, right, are the triggers, the thoughts that arise, kind of as problems arise, right? So you begin to get a little greedy, a little fearful. What are the specific thoughts that you have that come to mind, right? Obviously, the emotions I just mentioned, the behaviors, right? Are you kind of leaning into your monitors, like kind of staring at every little tick? Are you kind of yawning and kind of leaning back as you're trying to control yourself, or the nerves are just kind of having you a little kind of disconnected and detached, and you're sort of using that as an excuse not to try as hard. What are the changes in your decision making? And then changes your perception of the market, opportunities, trading mistakes. Again, whether we're talking about trading, whether we're talking about poker, same kind of idea. So just stream of consciousness. Just write down these particular, kind of signals, right? That's what all this is, right? The signals of the problem. The underlying problem, again, is those underlying flaws that I kind of alluded to, right? Illusion of control, high expectations, things like that. But in the early stages, this mapping process is something you can keep doing as you work through the book. All right. I want to just quickly share with you where on my website you can go to start working through this material. All right. So here we are. All right. Go to jaredtendler.com/worksheets. You can find it here under the resource tab, right? Blog, press, podcast, office hours, and worksheets. Okay. So for those of you who got the audiobook, which I know a lot of you have, man, it sound like hotcakes. Pretty cool. You can download a PDF companion. So if I know many of you kind of struggled like visualizing what these, kind of profiles, maps look like, and what a mental history looks like, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the visuals. So that's all here. And then of course we've got anger profile, discipline, fear, greed, mental history, which I just showed, trading A to C game analysis, which again, poker, trading, golf, esports, you name it. It's all the same stuff, just kind of different material in it. So make sure you kind of check that out. All right. Last of the questions from those who sent to me earlier. Toby asks, if I really try and fail, then I must admit that I'm a failure. Could you talk about the psyche of what, and I'm sure, or I guess what I and maybe many others kind of go through in that regard. So the problem here is that to call yourself a failure, if you were to fail, implies that there's something personal going on here, right? That you are asking for trading to provide you with personal confidence. And this is not, atypical. It's pretty common, especially for newer traders where, your personal interests start to bleed into trading. And so being able to kind of tease that out and make it not personal requires that you kind of go in and address those personal issues. Now, in the trading book, in chapter 7, talking about confidence, under the perfectionism section, perfectionism, high expectations, I have found to be the most common of the sort of performance flaws that can create significant personal confidence issues. So, here we are, we're not talking about, issues with your parents or, personal things that have happened to you. We're talking about performance-based problems that started as a kid, maybe into high school, maybe it was like with sports or performance, early on in your life. And so those high expectations can really damage confidence because you sort of set the benchmark here, right? This is what you expect. But another word for an expectation is a guarantee. And so you're guaranteeing something that you may or may not hit, right? And if you fall short of it, then man, I mean, you're gonna really kind of feel bad. And especially as a kid, we don't yet have the ability to sort of separate what we do and who we are, right? That's a thing that comes developmentally as you get older. And so early on, if those high expectations in a performance environment damaged your confidence in that environment, then it might actually damage your personal confidence as well. So if you think that you're a failure because you fail at trading, then maybe look to see if some of these high expectations of perfection may be part of what is kind of damaging your personal confidence. And then that personal confidence gets stabilized, and now you've got the freedom to operate within the trading space to be successful, make progress without the threat of failing on a personal level, as if you are permanently a failure, right? There's a big difference between failing at trading and failing as a person, right? But if there doesn't feel like there is one, it's a personal issue you got to work out. All right. So let me get back to questions through the stream here. Colton Stang here asks, when do you think it's time to walk away for a bit? Been trading flat since January with a drawdown in April, but feel with the COVID environment, the unstable employment, it's affecting it in a way that, we find part 2 here. Where are we? Oh man, too many comments. Good stuff. All right. Part 2. I'm not sure I will be able to move past until lockdowns end and stable income comes back. Wondering if the accumulated frustration is worse than working to resolve emotions. Yeah, I mean, this is a tough thing, right? So if you find, I mean, here's a glass of water here, right? So if you find that your glass every day you show up is this high, it's going to be tough, because just the intensity of the environment is going to raise it almost to the edge. And then if it's spilling over, well, then, you cannot make sound decisions, period, right? You're compromised. So you have to really kind of do a solid assessment for yourself as to how emotional are you at the start, right? And if it's intense, then yeah, taking a breather can help to reduce the volume, right? Like kind of dump out some of that water, but don't take it as like a complete break, right? Really use kind of the material in the book, the material that we're talking about here, to better understand what it is that is accumulating. Look, I understand the circumstances are pretty intense, but sometimes they're more intense because you haven't had a chance to really look at them objectively, make choices very objectively, and say, yes, I'm willing to take the risks, right? Given the probabilistic outcomes here, to, risk X amount, and then that might be a way to begin to start to stabilize your confidence, stabilize your execution, and kind of find your way back, on top of any other, kind of mental or emotional flaws that you have found, are accumulating. But yeah, I mean, the kind of the burnout effect, so to speak, of just the intensity can be there, right? That's separate to, the accumulated emotion that's there, right? Burnout just makes your emotions worse because you lack the mental resources to keep them at bay as you normally would. So a break can help to reset you there. A break could help to reset you by dumping some of the water out. But either way, I think you want to kind of get to more of the heart of what you're dealing with. All right. I'm a huge fan of neuroplasticity. Me too. Would you say that your technique is this? 100%. Yeah. I mean, basically, neuroplasticity is just, I think, kind of making a shift in our understanding, that the brain continues to grow and evolve, over time. I think, in the past, right, certainly kind of when I was a kid, we used to joke, if you got hit in the head, well, you lost those brain cells forever and they were just gone, right? And so obviously we keep punching ourselves in the head or each other and laugh about it. But the reality is, right, the brain has the ability to not only like continue to grow new neurons and new pathways and new habits, but to continue to stay agile and, correct old patterns. I mean, yes, it is true that kids, developmental stages are pretty ripe. I've got a young child and, I can see how fast she learns, and I can see the way that she's able to pick things up. And it's at a faster rate than I can at times, right? She lacks some emotional stability, but, that's par for the course of that age. But the point is, neuroplasticity continues, until you die, period. So yeah, we're talking about retraining habits, but it's not about unlearning, right? There's a common kind of misnomer. People say, oh, I got to unlearn this. No, think about this as completing like a complex maze. You do not want to unlearn that you took a wrong turn here. You want to know firmly not to do that, right? That's the essence of learning. and being able to figure out, what is the right thing, and to do that more often. So neuroplasticity is basically, the ability to, grow new habits and neurons. And so, yeah, I mean, here we are, like in the trenches, battling to think differently in certain spots, right? And you can train that and develop, right? Neuroplasticity, Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, huge fan, right? He talks about the insulation around neurons, right, is a big part of what training is all about, right? That insulation is called myelin, and the more myelin you have, the more hardwired your skills are, right? I can promise you, a lot of my crap in my head is hardwired, man. I can talk about the adult learning model, inchworm, right? The emotional system, malfunctioning mind, right? All of these flaws, breaking things down. There's a lot of myelin in my head about this stuff, but, right, my system continues to evolve, right? The trading book was a massive upgrade from the poker book from 10 years ago, right? Because I've been learning a ton. And so, I'm neuroplastic and, hopefully so are you. All right. Let's see here. Got about 15 minutes left here. All right. Dylan, I keep blowing my funded prop accounts on the first day of trading them live. I passed the exam to earn them, then deviate strategy on day one. Happened multiple times. Man, you don't understand, what is causing all that emotion. My worry is that you've been maybe a little bit too blind on the sim, paper trading here, not really understanding that, you got to treat the sim like it's the live market, and raise the stakes, make it feel like that is the beginning of your funded account, so you can begin to uncover what the heck is going on here. Because if you're blowing your prop account on day one, right, this thing is overflowing. Like the dam is broken and you're just getting run over. Like you're standing at the edge of a beach with a massive wave coming, and you think before you start the day that you're going to be strong enough to hold that thing up. And then you get, kind of just bowled over. And that's the end of it. So yeah, you got to do some work, brother. But I would do more work on the back end, raise the stakes, really try to understand what all that emotion is about. All right, I'm going to go a little rapid fire here, as I see there's still quite a lot of comments here, and we've only got about 10, 12 minutes left. Do you have any insight on this? I believe it's greed of taking home a larger check than normal. Oh, sorry. Didn't realize it's the same person. Dylan, my bad. Okay. So greed of, okay. So yes, if it's the greed of taking home a larger check than normal, well then what's driving that, right? Is there some maybe desperation, right? So desperation, chapter 7, it's about confidence, right? What is it? What does that larger check represent? Do you feel like you're looking for, a big lottery ticket type win to provide a windfall of confidence that you can actually make it as a trader, right? Versus taking it slow and methodically building up, not just an account, but building up the competency to trade an account like that, right? You cannot do that in a single day. And maybe that's what you're trying to do, right? Maybe the urgency to make, that much confidence in one day is really what this is about. And it can't happen. And you don't want it to happen because, if you were hypothetically to become that good of a trader in a single day, well, then you could be, you could lose it in a single day also, right? It becomes a lot harder to lose, a bedrock of skill. And in some respects, right, once you develop mastery for certain elements, you cannot lose that level of skill. All right, Jonas asks, what about you being unmotivated because you having a bad relationship with your organization and then start to procrastinate? However, you still like the game, but connecting the bad emotion to the game. Great question. I've seen this before, right? You have to make sure that you understand that you are the one in command here, right? Well, the environment and the environment might be garbage, just total crap. You are going to outlive this organization. You are going to have more opportunities than what you have right now. So again, burrow in and figure out how you can make the most of this opportunity, because whatever you figure out is going to help you in the future. You can still use the present opportunity for competency development, skill development that is going to carry over and move you forward. And maybe it's also in better understanding, right, how the bad relationship is really impacting you. Maybe it's again on a personal level, right? Maybe it's on a performance-based level. But either way, there's things you can uncover there about your own reactions, right, to the organization. Because it's not in a similar way, right? Let's say somebody were to call you like a bad name, say you're a freaking idiot. If you react to that, it means that it's kind of pinging upon a weakness, right? That you somewhere believe that you're an idiot, or you're defending against that idea because you're not certain that you're not, right? If you firmly know that you're not an idiot, that you're perfectly capable, you're, intelligent to whatever level, or you're at least comfortable with whatever intelligence you have, right? Then there's no downside to that comment. It's as if, I said, you're a purple dinosaur from, the planet Bleebop. Like it's a meaningless comment, right? To have somebody call you an idiot. But the fact that your interactions with the organization is kind of hitting you in some way suggests that there's a weakness that you can identify in addition to, my first point. All right. Look at this. A liege, the big time man from Counter-Strike and the league from Team Liquid. Jared, there's never a time where I listen to you and I don't learn a shit ton, no matter how much we have talked. You're doing great stuff. Man, I appreciate that, bud. So this is a guy that I've worked with for over 4 years and is one of the hardest working people that I know. So if you want to take some advice, take it from Luigi. Let him be a model for you, right? That there's always more that you can learn. So good stuff, man. All right. All right. Showing you where the files are. How can I stop sabotaging my time? BK asks. Well, you got to find out why, right? You can't stop something you don't understand, and so start asking yourself that why question at the moments where you are undercutting the utility of your time. Captain Axelrod. Hi, Jared. I'm in a spot where I have a lot of pressure on me from outside sources and also for myself to perform. This has once made me blow up an evaluation account in the past. How can I continue to live and keep that pressure from negatively impacting me? The monetary pressure would be the biggest. I mean, it's tough, right? But I think ultimately you want to be burrowing in, right, to the goals that you have, being really focused in, kind of the immediate short term. Sometimes the monetary pressures can feel big because they just kind of hang over your head. It's almost like kind of running a marathon and you're 3 miles in and you're wondering, what the hell did I just sign up for? Right. And you've got, another 23 miles to run. But how do you do it? It's just 1 foot in front of the other, a quarter mile at a time, a tenth of a mile at a time, and you just kind of go really, really short term and try to put those bigger things out. Give yourself a little bit of space. Okay, I've got a week, I've got a month where the money pressure is there, but it's not urgent. If the money pressure is urgent on a day-to-day, tick-by-tick, trade-by-trade basis, I mean, now you're talking about some extreme pressure. And if you're not capable of handling that now, then I suggest that's not an undertaking that you take, because it's going to be too damn risky. All right. Wow, look at this. Kind of come to the end. Close that banner. All right, let me just kind of do a little housekeeping here. Maybe just like kind of a favor to ask you guys, because one of the things I'm trying to do is just improve my SEO. So if you could just maybe smash the comment box real quick, like if the comment box was Google and you were searching for trading psychology material, something that would maybe kind of lend you to go to my website, what would you search for? If you could just kind of throw those in there, that would be super helpful. And I'll kind of look at that and send it to my team to analyze. That would be awesome. Just kind of a couple other announcements here. Let me throw this up here just because I like a good promo. Office Live, 15% discount. I know it says valid until the end of the live stream, but I'm kind of a dick if I do it that way. You have 5 minutes left. So no, I'll give you guys a little bit of time. If you haven't purchased the book, you can get it directly from me. And guess what? You can get the book via crypto. Let me show you where. Right. Go to the website, click on books, go to Mental Game of Poker. Mental Game of Trading. Mental Game of Poker is not on my website right now. Go to Mental Game of Trading. You'll click through. Okay. And click order here. And eventually you're going to land on a page that looks like this. Okay. Go all the way down to the bottom. Coinpayments.net. Right. Click place order. and it's going to take you to a page where you can pay with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Doge, because why not Doge? So yeah, that's kind of a new thing. And what else we got? Next live stream coming up in a month. Okay, let me find the roots here. So here we're at. Okay, the next live stream, next office hours is going to be on finding the root of your problem. All right, so here it is. All right. Now, things I've alluded to today really kind of talk about this particular topic, right? Getting at, a map of your greed, your fear, your tilt, confidence issues on the surface, identifying those themes, and then you begin to dig down and find the root flaw, the bias, the illusion, the wish. That is really the problem, right? All that stuff on the surface is just signals or symptoms of the actual problem. You need to be digging down and figuring out why those things exist and what the flaws are, the biases, etc., that are at the heart of it. And so, we're going to be doing more work on that in the next live stream. But what that does is it gives you a month of time to do your map, to work on your profile, to understand what's going on with your mental game, so that you can come prepared, with questions specifically to help me, or I guess for me to help you identify the root of your problem. Because if I were to suggest where my greatest competency lies, it is here, right? This is the thing that I do really, really well when I'm working with clients, right? Is kind of seeing the tea leaves and saying, that's the root problem. So go to office hours, okay? Scroll down at the bottom, give your input, okay? Put your name, email, post your question, okay? And, I'll be sure to get to it. And if you want to post like kind of pieces of your mental hand history, by all means, do it. Now, the other thing that I have not done today, which we can do next time too, is if any of you are interested in actually coming on the stream, right, on video or just audio, I can bring you in, right? And you can kind of join me and I'll, do a little dialogue. We'll go back and forth. The input form right now, as it stands, does not include that as an option. We will add that, right? And you can basically kind of click a box or say yes, like thumbs up. I want to come on stream. This is what I want to talk about. And I'll make some time to test that out and see how it goes. All right, I see a bunch more comments in here. Let me just see. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all. Like I said before, right? If you've gotten some value out of this, please make sure to share it, with your friends. Smash that like button, the bell, subscribe, hang out with me. Let me just see if there's any other comments here before we finish up. All right, let's see. All right, see some people buying the book. Shlomi, good stuff, man. Thank you. All right, good stuff. Appreciate the SEO suggestions there, guys. All right, little comment from Jesus here. Appreciate all the work you do. It's helped me in my poker tremendously. So here in Vegas, multi-day tournament. First day, my energy is perfect. And then I end up not being able to sleep when I get back from a 10-hour day. I've tried yoga, meditating, stretching, journaling, and it takes me a while to fall asleep and I wake up lethargic. Any thoughts? I would suggest, okay, so one of the biggest things you can be doing is, a bit of journaling, a bit of kind of data dumping during your breaks, right? So create a cycle where, a couple minutes, right, during the break, I realize you only have a short amount of time, couple minutes, just jot some notes down, really use that time for decompression. Poker players are notorious for just chatting away, during the break. You really got to use the break as a break, right? Not to just keep ripping through hands and, dump out the stuff that's important to you, rest, and then get back at it. Unless there's something really, really important, just put it aside, right? And if you do that throughout the day, then at the end of the 10-hour day, you won't have as much kind of stuff on your mind. So the journaling and the writing and the note-taking will be more effective, right? And then maybe you'll sleep a little bit better. So that's kind of one option for you. All right. Will this be recorded? That is a very good question. I hope so. I just realized that wasn't a thing that I necessarily did, but my streaming platform, I think, records stuff. If not, maybe YouTube has it. we'll find out. If not, then it won't be, and you're just gonna have to make the best of it, and we'll do it next time. All right, guys. Listen, we're right in the hour mark. Appreciate you joining me. Let everybody know 1 month from now, June 23rd, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC. Join me for the next one. We'll rock and roll. Have a good time, everybody. See ya.